Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I think we are here. We're going to begin. Very good afternoon to you all. Thank you very much indeed for joining us this afternoon. We hope that this live Q&A session will be of interest and will help you sort of navigate the next few weeks for those of you that are reopening your businesses. Couple of things from the top. We're going to keep you all on mute, if you don't mind. We're going to invite you to submit your questions using the live chat facility. I think most of you have access to that. So if you're unfamiliar with Zoom, you move your mouse down to the bottom of your screen, you'll see a number of icons will appear, one of which is labeled chat. If you click on that, that will open a panel to the right-hand side of your screen, and you can enter your questions in there. Please feel free to put the questions in as they arise, and we will work our way through them and hopefully sort out all the questions you have with you today. Okay, I have put at the top of the chat a couple of web links which will be useful to you both now and later. One is kentpublicprotection.info/trade-safely. That is really, if you haven't registered for the event today, it'll be quite useful to pop onto there while we're talking this morning, just to submit your details so that we can follow up with any questions that we're unable to answer here. We'll have your details and we can then go back to you. So that'll be one to do during the course of this afternoon's meeting. And the second web link you see there is kentpublicprotection.info/free-business-advice. During this current crisis, the Kent Trading Standards have put up a free business advisory service where you can contact them. So you'll submit your details and they will contact you normally within 24 to 48 hours, and will hopefully sort out any questions or queries you may have around compliance, licensing, and so forth. Okay, so introductions. Right, my name is Tudor Price and I am the manager at the Kent and Medway Growth Hub. Our job is to make sure that businesses have access, good guidance and advice for the publicly funded business support programs operating across Kent and Medway. We are also running a COVID-19 business support helpline, the number of which will be published at the end of this session, which is there to provide businesses with the support, advice and guidance around not just the HMG support measures, but obviously around helping your business navigate its way back into profit. I'm joined this afternoon rather, by Nathan Martin, who is the Principal Trading Standards Officer from Kent Trading Standards. Good morning, good afternoon, Martin. Thank you very much for joining us. And also with Annie Sargent, who is the Environmental Health Partnership Manager for the Sevenoaks and Dartford District Councils. They are the two experts in the room. I'm here really just to facilitate and to maybe answer a few funding questions that might crop up. But for now, I'm just going to ask both of them to introduce themselves, a little bit about where they've got to here, and then we'll start firing off some of the questions. So ladies first. Annie, could I ask you to unmute and just do a little introduction?
Hello everyone. Yes, my name is Annie Sargent and I am the Environmental Health Partnership Manager at Sevenoaks and Dartford. I've become quite heavily involved in Best Business for All across the county over the last few years, and it is a bit of a mission of mine to help break down the barriers between regulators and businesses. So that's why I'm here today, really just to offer as much advice and assistance that I can to any businesses, particularly during this difficult time.
Lovely, thank you very much indeed, Annie. Thank you. Nathan, over to you.
Thank you, Tudor, and thank you very much to all of those who've joined us today. My name is Nathan Martin. I'm a Principal Trading Standards Officer for Kent County Council Trading Standards. I'm working in the Business Advice Services team, which is a team within Trading Standards which is dedicated purely to working with businesses and doing what we can to help you answer those questions you have to make sure you continue to trade legally and fairly and protect your business. With regards to why I'm here today, my role really is to support Annie and answer those questions about who can and can't open, and anyone who's thinking about changing what they do, the way they sell, or the types of goods they make. There's obviously going to be things you need to consider there, and hopefully I'll be able to answer those questions for you.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much indeed, Nathan. Right, so we have our two experts in the room with us today. This is a live question and answer session, so we don't have presentations for you. There is already a massive information out there on the gov.uk websites, plus also the Kent and Medway Growth Hub has been circulating information as well. So there's quite a bit out there. So I'd invite you to start popping some questions onto the live chat here, and then we can get the session underway. So our first question here is, how complicated is it for me to change from a shop to selling online? This is clearly something that a lot of businesses are now rethinking. Sounds like a trading standards question to me. So Nathan.
Yeah, that's one for me. Thank you very much. Okay, so how complicated is it going to be? Well, really, the biggest complication you're going to face is the technical side of things, actually having a website up and running that does what you want. And unfortunately, I can't help out with that side of things because I'm not technically savvy at all. But with regards to what you'll need to do to be legally compliant, it's not too difficult at all, really. There's some basics that you'll need to comply with. You'll need to tell people exactly who they're dealing with, so your company name or your proprietor name and how they can contact you. You'll need certain privacy information. Obviously privacy is a big thing now, and you'll also need to give people certain types of pre-contractual information, so how much they're going to pay, whether they have to pay delivery charges, all that sort of thing. Seems daunting at first, but it's actually pretty simple. There is guidance on the Business Companion website. If anybody wants to go there, that'll tell you what you need to do to get set up and running online. And you can also contact us at the Business Advice Services team, and we will do a web check service for you if you want it. There are additional rules for trading online depending on what you're going to trade in. So whether it is, toys, electrical goods, food particularly has quite a lot of requirements for trading online. But what they tend to be is the requirements that need to be on the product itself will need to be on the website. So if you look up guidance on, for example, prepackaged food, then that sort of thing will also need to appear on the website. What I'd suggest you do is look out the general guidance, and then if you do find that you're confused about how to move forward, contact us at the Trading Standards Service and we'll give you specific advice for your business.
That's brilliant, Nathan. Thank you very much indeed. And that contact link again, that's the Kent Public Protection.info/free-business-advice, and they'll be able to sort of put you in touch with all the various regulations and rules. Clearly, it's something a lot of retailers are looking at doing to supplement, obviously, some of the sort of drop in footfall they're seeing now. Okay, so we have another question here. This is from Jill. So we are a family-run business and we live in the same household. So is it okay that we don't social distance with each other as long as we do with our customers? Sounds like an environmental health question, that one. Annie.
Hello, yes, the answer is quite simple. Actually, if you are in the same household, you don't need to socially distance. You just need to protect your customers and anyone else that comes into your shop, or business, just to protect yourself. So that is the short answer, really. You're fine. You're fine.
That's great. To be honest with you, I think we're all very grateful for the short and simple answers, because one thing we all crave in business is certainty. So that's brilliant. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Annie. Okay, next question here from Natalie. Do I have to provide hand sanitizer and PPE for customers in my shop? I'm not sure who that would be. Is that you, Annie? Another one for health? It is. Annie, please.
Yeah. So the answer to that is really just depends on the risk assessment that you've carried out. So in an ideal world, all businesses, before they start opening again, should do some sort of risk assessment as to how they're going to protect their business colleagues and their customers from COVID infection. So I think we all know that you have to ensure social distancing, and obviously hand washing is a key factor. So it depends what your business actually is and how much you think customers might touch your product, and it depends what your product is as well. So say, for instance, you're selling open food, I personally would expect to have some sort of sanitizer available when I go into that shop, so I can at least know my hands are clean before I go in there. So if I was a business, I think it's just common sense that you would try and provide something. There's no rule that says you must. It's really up to you. And obviously smaller shops, it's going to be harder, but it's something you have to think about for your own business. So I'd say, yes, it was a good idea. Did somebody say face masks as well? Was that, or was it just?
Well, PPE, yeah. So it's a requirement for PPE.
So it's the same issue as well. I mean, if you're selling a product that's high risk, that could get contaminated by handling very easily, you might want to offer gloves for people. It's really up to you. You have control in your own business as to how you keep it safe. Your top priority is to keep your team, your own staff safe first, and then work out how you're going to keep your customers safe. So if you think there's any interactions that might occur where staff might get close to the customer, then obviously you might want to think about some sort of masking system. It's very hard because every business is so different. We're trying to give you answers for hundreds of different types of businesses, but there is no legal requirement.
I think that was the point I was just going to ask. So there's no legal requirement, but your customers would probably expect to find hand sanitizer on their way in, I guess, if things are being handled. But yeah, you haven't got to gown them up and mask them up before they walk in through the front door.
No, only if you, as I said, it depends what your business is, but it's really about your decision and your choice, and also how it looks to your customers. So if you feel that you want to create a good impression, I would say, you know, provide some stuff for people. But like I said, it's not essential, and you won't get criticised if you're not providing it.
That's fantastic, Annie. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, let's move on to another question now. So this one is from Claire. I would like to start making face coverings. I've seen quite a few of these cottage industries kicking up on Facebook recently. I would like to start making face coverings for the general public, but this isn't something I do normally as part of my business. Is it okay for me to start doing this? This definitely sounds like one for you, Nathan.
Yeah, that's a trading standards issue. Okay, so face coverings. It's a difficult one, especially given that the government guidance has been that face coverings don't really have any benefit at all. So ultimately, you've got to be very careful about what you say. But a face covering itself is basically just a garment of clothing. It's a piece of material that covers the face. As such, there's no legal requirement why you couldn't make and sell it. You would have to comply with other legislation that clothing has to comply with. So you couldn't use any dyes, glues, etc. that might be dangerous if they were inhaled. So your product does have to be safe. You would need to provide the normal labeling requirements for how you clean it, that sort of thing. So in essence, there's no problem with you selling it. However, I think you need to be very, very careful about any sort of claims you make about that product. Because as soon as you start saying it's effective against X, Y, or Z, then you move into difficult territory. You might be classing your product as personal protective equipment, PPE, depending on the claims you make. And there are a lot of legal requirements for PPE that you'll need to comply with and which you won't be able to do when you're working from home. Even if you're not straying into PPE territory, the claims you make might be false or misleading, which is in itself is, you know, a criminal offence. So ultimately, you can make and sell these products as long as you comply with the normal clothing requirements, but you cannot make any claims about them at all, because if you do, you're opening yourself up to all sorts of problems.
Okay, that's really useful. I think that highlights again that sense of it's got to be it's got to do what it says on the tin, hasn't it? Which is what businesses always sometimes sort of get lost in. But if you're going to make a product, it has to be quite clear about what it is and is what it can and can't do. Yeah. I guess that comes most of the wording. And if they come through to you on the advice line, I guess they could get some real clarity on a particular product.
Of course. If you have, for example, if you make a mock-up and you want to get specific advice on that, then we'd be happy to do that. Not a problem at all.
Fantastic. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, moving on to another question now. So what is the protocol if one of my staff come down with COVID-19 and they have been in contact with other staff members and members of the public. Yeah, this is one I've heard through other channels as well, actually, is, and this maybe is to do with the track and tracing and things, which basically, again, it sounds like a health matter. So Annie, do you have an answer for this one?
Yeah. So the fact is that no one should be getting within 2 meters of anybody at work. Obviously, unless you're from the same household as we discussed earlier. But actually, if you've got your systems in place in a work environment, no one should be getting that close to be potentially infected by someone anyway. So I would say that unless there has been some sort of close contact with that person within the staff, there would be no need for them to isolate at all, because it's really, we're only really interested in people who've had close contact with people who are tested positive. That is the kind of key thing. But if you're following all the systems that you should be, making sure everybody is either protected by screens or that definitely have a 2 meter distance between people, then there really shouldn't be an issue. So all you can do is say that you might want to send some people off for testing if you've got particular concerns, but actually, no, you carry on. There is, unless you really strongly suspect somebody has had that close, long-term contact with that person, that is the only time you would really need to get get advice.
And I guess it's something
call the Public Health England or Environmental Health, and we'd advise you anyway. We would give you some advice. It's not really a problem with contacting someone just for that professional advice. We wouldn't criticise you or cause any problems by you doing that. So.
The question we had through the other channel I mentioned earlier was around, I know one of my members of staff is now tested positive. Do I need to contact the customers that have been in, or do I need to have some way of recording who's been in at all?
Okay, so for me, this is going to be more of an issue when we start opening up the closer contact professions. So particularly hairdressers, beauty salons, anyone doing any sort of close contact work with people. They really should be keeping details of customers, where they live, and phone numbers. So I think it would be in those situations where you would want to contact previous customers of that person in the last week, just to notify them. But actually, there's no real reason for them to do anything. They wouldn't need to isolate or anything, only if they would just need to watch out to see if they've got symptoms. So I think that's where you're going to need it, because obviously to keep names and addresses of customers in a retail environment is just impossible.
That's
and also
great.
You have to worry about, you've got that information, haven't you? You've got that information that really then you come into data protection and worries about that sort of thing and sensitive information. So again, just call the local teams and ask for advice.
That's great. I think that you're right. Those that are in close contact who haven't yet been sort of released from lockdown yet, they invariably take appointments. Therefore, there's contact details, I guess. So that facility is there. But certainly from a retail point of view, that's good to hear that you haven't got to be taking names and addresses as they walk across the threshold. So thank you very much. That's great. Thank you, Annie. Okay, let's move on to some other questions here now. So we were. Actually, one perhaps for the future. We were just talking about releasing lockdown from Katie, from Kate rather. Will my tables need to be 2 meters apart from the 4th of July? Annie, it's back to you again, I think, isn't that one? Yeah.
Well, first of all, I'm sorry to say that there is actually at the present time no real confirmation that food outlets will be able to serve food up to within their own environs on the 4th of July. But let's say that they do, then obviously you will be able to put tables and chairs out to ensure that you've got reasonable social distancing for your customers. I understand that Kent Highways have lifted restrictions on businesses putting chairs and tables out close to their businesses. So it might be something you might want to contact Kent Highways about, just to get preliminary advice or preliminary permission to do that, ready for when you can start operating again. So I think, you know, as long as you've got the highway permission to have tables and chairs on the pavements or near your property, then that there shouldn't really be an issue with that.
Now, there's a supplementary question to that from Ian here. So he's talking about, can people sit outside my restaurant to eat / drink if I put benches out? And the same question from another question from Ian, which relates to that sort of situation, is, can I accept cash, or does it have to be a card payment / contactless only? So you're talking about highways, and I guess this is how, with people spilling out onto the pavement, if they don't have a seating area already, how does that sort of play out, and who would people need to speak to find out if they're allowed to do that sort of thing?
So at the present time, nobody is allowed to have seating areas outside their food premises. You are only allowed to sell food for takeaway to be eaten away from the premises. So we have to be quite firm about that. That is actually starting to creep in, and some businesses are thinking that, you know, that it somehow is allowed, but unfortunately it's still deemed as being social gathering. However, like I said, when the restrictions are lifted on restaurants and pubs and whatever, then obviously they will be able to eat next to the premises. So yeah, as I said, it's Highways England really. That's Highways England. Kent Highways that you need to.
Kent Highways. Okay.
Or if the land belongs to someone else adjacent to your premises, then obviously you need to speak to them too. But a lot of premises do actually have outdoor seating already, so they're probably just set up for it anyway. And you'll probably find that customers try and sit as far away from others as possible when those restrictions.
But at the moment, as you're saying, even if you have outdoor seating area or you plan to design it, it's not to be used at the moment. That's still one of the. That's probably a good point, actually, just to come to Nathan, really, just to remind everyone that's on the call who can open and who can't open at the moment. Just a bit of a reminder where we're at.
Well, obviously, with regards to eating establishments, so restaurants, cafes, coffee shops, all that sort of thing, you can continue to be open, but as Annie said, you can only be open for takeaway or delivery. So you can have people come in and serve them and then have them leave with their cup of coffee or whatever. With regards to the tables and chairs, if you've already got tables and chairs outside your business, you should be roping them off really, because you can't be doing anything that will encourage people to actually congregate at the moment. Now, we may get, as Annie's alluded to, we might get something on the 4th of July, but until they've actually said that restaurants can have people congregate and eat on the premises, then it has to be, no, you can't do anything that might encourage people to stay.
Thank you, Nathan. Can I just come back to you, Annie, on that cash and the card payments? Obviously, we've seen a lot of shops now saying we prefer you to pay by card. Is that a requirement now, or can you still take both?
No, it's not. You can take cash or card, however you decide you want to do it. It's your choice as a business how you want to take payment. However, there is a trend now where some businesses are choosing to say we are only taking card payments only. I was reading yesterday the amount of cash that's flowing through the system at the moment has dropped dramatically because of the fact that obviously people are touching it. It could be a potential carrier for infection. So that is why people are trying to avoid it. But it is, like I said, it's down to each business's choice, and you know, and you could put some systems in place if you were collecting cash to kind of make sure that it was taken safely. So you might have a system where one person is wearing gloves, taking cash only, and sorting that out, rather than handling food or doing other work around the business. So that there are ways around it. But yes, unfortunately, a lot of businesses are now saying card only.
Which has a sort of financial impact, I know, for businesses, because obviously they'll pay a small charge for processing electronically. So, but that's really useful. Thank you very much, Nidana. So the choice is there. You just need to make sure you made the appropriate procedures in place. Okay, let's go to another question. So here's another one. I run a perfume counter. Can customers still pick up sample bottoms? Excuse me. Can customers still pick up sample bottles to smell? Gosh, I'm glad they weren't picking up the former. To smell the products, etc. So this is all around handling goods, obviously, in the shop, and certainly frequently picked up products, obviously, of great concern. So again, this is probably another health issue. So Annie, do you have any thoughts on this one?
Yes, those of you who've been in places like Boots, you'll notice that they've taken all their sample bottles off the counter. Again, it's how you decide to do it. So if you've got a perfume business, obviously, I think actually a lot of businesses were putting safety things in anyway for hygiene reasons before any of this came in. So businesses will spray a piece of paper with the scent on that, you know, the assistant would spray a little sample piece of paper for the business. They wouldn't necessarily touch people or get people to handle the goods anyway. So I just think, again, it just needs a little bit of thought. I mean, if you really wanted to have some samples out, you would have to obviously disinfect them every time somebody touches them, which might actually disturb the smell of the scent.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much for that. So just really sort of, whose responsibility is it to control social distancing outside of premises? Now, we were talking earlier about people perhaps spilling out, and we saw yesterday on the news outside some large shopping precincts, queues down the road. Who's responsible for those stickers out on the floor and the barriers, and who's got to do that? I'm not quite sure who that would be. Actually, Nathan, would that be you, or is it?
I think it's more likely to be Annie, but I'll give my my opinion as well. If you're the business and you're putting measures in place on the flooring outside your shop, obviously that's going to be your responsibility. But as Annie's already discussed, you'll need to speak to either the person that owns the property, you know, outside the shop, or the local council highways department, to make sure that you're actually allowed to do that. You might also have to think about how that's going to affect the other shops around you as well, because if you're in a parade of shops, everybody is going to be trying to have queues for their people. So you might need to discuss with the businesses around you how you're going to manage the queuing system without causing an obstruction to the public highway. But markings as such will be your responsibility, but you're going to have to get the permission to do that. With regards to the enforcement body that looks after it, if people aren't socially distancing, now I would assume that is either going to be the police or environmental health. What do you reckon, Annie?
Well, Nathan, this has been a real bone of contention for the councils this week, this particular issue. Apparently, we haven't actually got any powers to actually enforce queuing and social distancing in general common areas. The only time that it would probably get enforced would be if there was an affray and the police would get involved. But actually, it's really for everyone just to kind of have a bit of common sense, like you say, speak to their neighbouring businesses. You know, hopefully people will just do what they should and social distance. But as a business, you can control the queue outside your business. That is your right to do that. But actually, the enforcement of telling people to social distance is really, really vague at the moment, I'm afraid. I think it's probably down to other people just telling you to back off or can you step away. That'll probably be how it works.
I think certainly one of the things the British are famous for is being able to queue well, and I think we'll probably maintain that standard throughout. But that's really useful to know, actually. So again, sort of using common sense, working in harmony. And if you're going to stick anything on the floor or start erecting barriers and stuff, you need to really involve either your landlord, the local authority, the highways, and just neighbours if it's going to impact on them. So that's brilliant. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, let's move on to another question now. Interesting one. This I was going to work this one out as well. How do I know how many people I can let in my store at one time? Is it based on square footage? Oh, not sure. Who's that one? Annie.
Nathan, are you okay if I go first? Is that all right?
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, no problem. Okay. Basically, the guidance on this for businesses from the government is quite vague. No surprises, really. Yeah, and it's about how do you ensure that there is 2 metre distancing between your customers when they come into the shop. So I was having a little look at this, and I was thinking, you can either do it 2 ways, I think. You can kind of almost in your head or on a piece of paper draw up a plan of your sort of area, this, like a plan of the business, and put imaginary people in 2 metres apart, and just see how that works for numbers. But obviously you'd need to think about not obstructing the till, people not obstructing doorways, entrances and exits. So you might want to take a few people out for those sort of purposes. And also it depends how crowded your business actually is inside, how many units you've got, how many gondolas, how many shelving units you've got, fridges, freezers, etc., etc. So it really kind of is dependent on your own decision, really. There is a sort of bit of a rule of thumb. If you take the square meterage of your shop and divide it by 5, that's supposed to give you a sort of starting point. But like I said, you need to then take the area out of anything that's obstructing the floor. So again, if you're really not sure, it's probably always safe to err on the side of safety. But again, just ask. If you're really not sure, I'm sure we can come up with a sensible number between us. But yeah, it's not really, I don't think people should get too hung up on it, but I think it's more about the management of it. So what I'm seeing is that a lot of shops started off with good intentions, but then if to say the security guard on the door isn't there, everyone just walks in and the shop starts getting very crowded, and it all started. So it's really about how you manage it within the shop as you go along. So that's the sort of thing you really need to look at.
That's great. Thank you very much, Annie. And Nathan, do you want to add to that at all? You got any scientific formula you could share with us?
Well, no science, I'm afraid. As Annie said, the guidance is there. It is a bit vague, but what it does require you to do is do a risk assessment. What that boils down to is you need to think about it and think, well, how can I keep people safe? And your number should reflect how many people you think you can get in and keep people safe, including you and the rest of your staff as well. So when you're factoring in how many people can get in that premise, don't forget any of your own people that are in there as well. What I would add is, if you have a very, very tiny premise, there might be premises where opening is not an option. They're allowed to do it, but you can't keep people safe, because if you're going to reopen, it is required that you keep people safe and that you don't contribute to the spread of COVID-19. And some premises just aren't going to be able to do that. But remember, there are still ways that you can keep trading, even if it's not through a shop. So online, through deliveries, all that sort of thing. If you do need any help about thinking how you might switch to a different model, then just give us a call. And if we can help, we will.
Brilliant, Nathan, thank you very much indeed. I've got a question which sort of covers off slightly 2 things here, really. One is, it goes back a little bit to the queuing outside. So is there any specific requirements for signage to enforce social distancing and or markings on the floor? So I know sometimes, certainly if you think with Nibosh and other bits and pieces like that, you need to make sure the signage is of a certain size and colour and things. And then perhaps linked to that is another question, which is, where can I find information about social distancing measures now I can open my retail store? So I'm guessing the 2 are linked. Who wants to take a stab at that first? So let's go with Nathan first, because he's missing out on the action here a bit, and then we'll come to you, Annie.
Well, I won't cover signage. I'll save that for you, Annie. But with regards to where can I find guidance, if people go to gov.uk and just search for shops and branches, that brings up all the published guidance updated on June 14th, I think, about how you open safely, social distancing in place, toilets, hand sanitizing, all that sort of thing. So gov.uk and then search for shops and branches. Over to you, Annie.
That's fine, because that's the bit I was hoping you would do anyway. So that's good. So I know, well, the two authorities I work for particularly, they've actually produced signage that you can actually use in your shop. So just give them a call, and they've printed off posters that you can put in your shop windows that ask people to you know, whatever rules you want to put into place for your business, or just some general rules. So those posters are available. As I said, and also, yeah, I think signage and things, they've done a lot of that for you anyway, you'll find, because they actually they're trying to manage their town centres and shopping high streets anyway. So call the local council. They've actually been given some money to help businesses in that respect anyway. So I'm sure they'll only be too pleased to give you whatever you need.
Excellent. This is the High Street Reopening Fund, I believe, isn't it? They've got some funding, which just on, so the Growth Hub specialises in these sort of funding schemes and things, and we do know that particular fund is there to support some of the changes that might need to be made in an area, like putting in hand cleaning stations in the town centre, or perhaps with some of the signage issues. What they can't do is provide retailers with PPE or cash handouts and stuff. So again, there's sort of some restrictions around what they can and can't offer on that, but a lot of support's been pushed in, which should probably lead to a question for me. So I'll get in on the act here. So there was a question around, can you help me find funding that my business is eligible for? As I mentioned at the top of this session, the Kent and Medway Growth Hub has been running a COVID-19 business support helpline. The number for that I'll publish on the chat in a second, but for those of you with pen to hand, it's 03333 602 300. Now that's a free helpline. We have a number of business advisors who are sat on the other end of the phone there, who have all the latest information on the government support measures. Now, quite a few of them have been out for a little while now, so you hopefully would have heard something about them, but you may not necessarily be aware of the eligibility criteria. And we have at least 4 or 5 businesses call us daily who weren't aware that they were eligible for some of the grant programs that support it. In its simplest form, there are sort of two main areas that might be relevant for the audience we have today. One is the Small Business Grant Scheme, which relates to a grant of £10,000 if you are in receipt of small business rate relief. The other one is the Retail, Hospitality and Leisure Grant Scheme, which is up to £25,000. So this is really restaurants, pubs and clubs that have been forced to close, that have a rateable value in excess of 15,000 but under 51. So there's a £25,000 grant. Now, quite a lot has been handed out to businesses already because the local authorities knew who these firms were, but there is still quite a bit unclaimed. So if you have any doubts or you're uncertain, please do give the helpline a call, and I'm just going to start typing that into the live chat now, so you've got that for future reference. So 03333 602 300, and that's available Monday to Friday, 8:30 through till 5. And the business advisors there are all commercial business advisors. They're very experienced, and they can help you go through the application forms. Those of you that have staff will probably be aware of the furlough scheme. That has just started a new phase. There's some changes coming now, which if you haven't got staff registered on the furlough scheme already, I'm afraid that ship has sailed. It's now only for people that are registered at the moment or have been in the first wave, and the changes will be coming up fairly soon from the beginning of July. and then change again in August. The self-employed income support scheme is one that's been running for a little while now. There's a second round of grants being allocated. That'll go live on the 14th of July. Slight change in the criteria this time, in that you need to be able to evidence that you've had your business has been adversely affected, which for many of us is not going to be too difficult, I suspect. But just be aware of that. There is a lot to go through. I won't cover it all here now. Again, visit the Kent and Medway Growth Hub. Give us a call on 03333 602 300, and it's all free, and we'll do our best to help you navigate your way through the various programs of support. That was my bit. I'll move on now to some more questions. Now, Norfolk's been waiting patiently here for us. So, Norfolk, you had two questions. So, I own a campsite. Can I open my campsite now? And also, second question there is also, could I run outdoor boot camp for 5 people? Nathan, that sounds like an open or closed question.
Yeah, that's one for me. Unfortunately, campsites do come under accommodation, and all accommodation does have to remain closed for now, other than some very, very specific circumstances. For example, where a person is effectively homeless and they'd have nowhere else to go if you kicked them out. I honestly don't think the campsite is going to come under any of that. So no, unfortunately, your campsite does have to remain closed for now. As far as the boot camp question goes, well, what the government has said is you can have groups of up to 6 people that are not from the household can join together outside for physical activity, so sport, recreation, that sort of thing. Well, sorry, I should say sport and physical activity. So if your boot camp had 5 people and you as the instructor, then you'd meet the 6 criteria and that would be perfectly fine. But numbers wise, you have to include yourself as well there, so your actual group could not go higher than 5.
That's great. Thank you very much. Hopefully, Norfolk answered your question. If you have a supplementary question, please do pop it on the live chat. Annie, did you have anything to add to those 2 criteria? I think we know about the open and close. It's just the social distancing aspect to it.
No, I mean Nathan's absolutely spot on with his answer, and you know, this thing about campsites and holiday homes and things that's another thing, and you really would need to speak to someone to get specific advice on that. But generally, they're not allowed to be open at the time.
Okay. Hopefully, it won't be long for any of us now that in that situation. Sort of the 4th of July is looming fast, and I think we're all very keen to. Certainly, I'm putting on the pounds, so I'll be very keen to get out and about and do some exercise. Right. Okay. Moving on. So, question here from Wendy. So, I run a shoe shop. Can I let people try on shoes, and can we measure children's feet? So, got to come into contact with people here. This is quite interesting. Do you have to measure people's feet, Nathan? Is that? I mean, is there any laws around that sort of thing?
No. You don't have to measure people's feet to sell shoes, but I think you'd find it quite difficult to sell people well-fitted shoes if you didn't measure their feet, though. But I'll chuck this one over to Annie, because this is all about social distancing, this one.
Annie.
Okay, so what you obviously have to do as part of opening up your business is you would do your risk assessment. So if you decide that there is too much of a risk for your staff because they are coming into less than 2 meter distance with customers, you might just at this time have to rethink how you run your business. So whilst shoe shops haven't been allowed to be opened, people have been buying shoes online, and actually if you look on, to be fair, if you just look on Google it or look at advice for how do I measure my child's feet or how do I measure my feet, there's actually quite a lot of good tips on how you can actually get your shoe size, drawing your foot, drawing around your foot and then measuring certain parts of it, and you can actually there are systems in place. So as a shoe shop, I was thinking that you could probably do something like a click and collect service where people don't actually try the shoes on, but they take them away, you know, they pay for them, take them away, but if they're not a correct fit, then they would bring them back, and you would obviously just put those in some sort of storage for 48 hours or somehow do some minor disinfection of them before you then put them out for sale again. So there are ways that you can do this, but you probably won't be running it as you would have done before COVID came into being. just because I think the risks that are there, there's too much risk for you getting too close to people. That's my personal opinion, but we're not saying you can't open, and we're not saying that you can't sell shoes. You just might want to think about, you know, if you were a customer, would you like the thought that people had touched those shoes or tried them on? Probably not. So you need to think about, put yourself in the position of the customer and what they might think. And people might not want you to get near to them to measure their feet, or they might not want you to. So I think it's going to take a little bit of leeway on both parties' side, both parties.
Thank you. Interestingly, again, on sort of fitting sides of things, another question here. My changing rooms will be closed. But do I need to do anything if people try on clothes in the shop? Not sure. Is that Annie? Is that you again?
Yeah, I can try and answer this one. Again, it's all a bit. It's really down to you how you want to manage it. But I've noticed that shops are saying, please do not try on the clothes. They're being quite specific, and shop staff are actually reminding customers of that when they're
I've got a second question from Natalie, and I just want to add to that, because one of the questions here which relates to the same answer is perhaps, what do I do if a customer won't wear a mask and I want them to when shopping in my shop? So I guess it's all around enforcement in your own premises. How does that play out? Who's responsible?
Yeah, exactly. It's like anything else. If a customer's behaving in a way that you don't want them to behave in your shop, you've got every right to ask them to leave or to not allow them access. So, you know, that it is your business, it is your premises. It's not, you know, you have that control on things. And like I said, or if you want to be, I mean, obviously it's a balance between you and your customers, but if you want to give the customers a chance to try things on, then you might again want to take those things away, put them somewhere safe for 48 hours, just so that, you know, if there is anything on them, that it will denature, it will go, and then you can put them back out again. And this is what I think Waterstones is doing with their books. So you can pick a book up, have a look at it, but then you put it on a trolley, which then will at the end of the day get pushed to the back, and then they will put that stock out again in a few days when the risk isn't there anymore. I hope there was another question in there as well, which I can't.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah, you covered them both. That's great. Thank you very much. Okay. There's another question here now. So it might be, actually, it's interesting. There's probably two questions for you, Nathan, really, to do with closure. So first of all, one from Kate. Could I hire out my premises to people in their social bubbles? And the other question, which might be related to this as well, I offer takeaway food. Are my customers allowed to enter my premises, if it's also a restaurant, to collect their orders? So I guess we're talking about whether it should be open, closed, and the rest of it. So what do you think, Nathan?
The first one is quite difficult, and I don't know the exact answer to it off the top of my head. What I can say is community spaces like community centres and places of worship and all that sort of thing, they are still closed. So I suspect that you could not rent out your space in that way. But what I'd recommend is that either contact us directly and we'll see if we can get a specific answer, because it's not something that's come up in the guidance. So it's something that I would need to look into a bit more on that one. And the second one was about entering the premises, wasn't they?
That's right.
Yeah. You can only be open for takeaway or delivery, but people can come into the premises to collect their food exactly like a coffee shop runs, where they come in to get a cup of coffee. It doesn't matter that it's a restaurant, but obviously you can't have your chairs and tables out if that would encourage people to congregate or to eat their food or anything like that. So yes, they can come into your premises, but operate social distancing and make sure they don't hang around. What I would also add is the government have made it clear that any sort of seating in the local vicinity of your restaurant, so stuff just outside, all that sort of thing as well, even if it's not you that set it up, that is considered to be part of your premises. So if there is seating outside, either remove it if you've got the right to do that, or rope it off so that people don't sit and eat their food there.
Fantastic. Thank you very much indeed. Anything, did you want to add anything to that at all, as far as sort of coming in and out, collecting stuff?
No, Nathan's spot on with his answer.
Fantastic, excellent.
Right.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are at almost 5 to 2. Lunchtime has passed. Hopefully you've all had a bite to eat while listening to our guidance and advice. I've posted onto the chat there again the phone number for the Kent and Medway Growth Hub and the Business Support Helpline. There is also on there, certainly Kate W as well, that's the link there for the business advice for trading standards if you have any questions. I think what we'll do is we'll just wrap up now. Whilst we're chatting, if there's any other last minute questions you want to ask or we felt we haven't answered for you, by all means publish them now and we'll see if we can get them tied off before 1 o'clock. But I'm just going to ask maybe to come to Annie first, just to sort of, you want to sum up anything that you think, any takeaways you think people should really sort of just try and hang on to, and then I'll come to you, Nathan. So Annie, what about you first?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to, you know, we are here and we understand the struggle that businesses are having during this time. I mean, it absolutely must be terrible. And we actually, you know, we really want to help you operate in any way that you can and to get your businesses up and running. So we are here, and also we're here for those businesses that aren't open yet, but obviously need to start thinking about how they're going to open. I'll just point you in the direction. So food businesses, there is a checklist that is on the Food Standards Agency website, which is food.gov.uk. And it's really useful, and it's just about how you can plan and prepare to open up your business, and how you can make things safe in serving food, including all the social distancing requirements, how you're going to cope with deliveries, how you're going to cope with putting things out, and any sort of takeaway that you might have. So I urge you just to have a look. But again, just pick up the phone, dial your local council, or Nathan's team, or the Growth Hub. We're all here. We'll all try and help, and we can hopefully put you in the right direction to get some answers. And as I said, when things ease a little bit, we will be there to come and help you actually on site and give you some advice on site as well. So yeah, please don't hesitate to ask us.
Annie, thank you very much indeed. Before I come across to Nathan, just to sum up there, we've had one question late through here. So this is from Matthew. He lost connection halfway through. Can sunbed shops open? I think this is again open, closed, Nathan. So if you want to answer that, and then we'll leave us with your top tips.
I'm glad you answered this question, Matthew, because this is an important one that's been the subject of a lot of debate. But it has been confirmed by the government that sunbed shops, tanning salons, that sort of thing, they are considered beauty establishments, and beauty places cannot open at the moment. So if you run a sunbed shop, I'm afraid for the moment you do have to remain closed.
Again, sorry, bad news there, Matthew. Sorry about that. Again, if there's anything else, if you haven't accessed the government's funding schemes and programs, again, give the helpline a call, 03333 602 300, and we'll see if we can try and identify any funding. So we're just going to close now. Nathan, I'm going to say, is there anything else that you wanted to sort of impart, any guidance for people that are either opening now or waiting to open in July?
What I would say is it's all a bit of a movable feast, to be honest. We've got the guidance, but the guidance is a little bit woolly, and the legislation only came out Sunday evening, quite late Sunday evening. So we're working from scratch. The situation will develop. We will do our best to answer your questions and all that sort of thing, but it may be that further guidance comes out which changes an answer that you've been given. Something that we thought was okay, the guidance gets put out and it specifically isn't okay. So I apologize for that, but we have to react to the information that we've got at the moment. I'd echo Annie's words. We are here to help. We want to get the economy moving again. We want to help businesses get back on their feet. All of the advice that we're giving to anyone who's trying to overcome a problem caused by COVID, it's all free of charge. So please don't hesitate to get in touch, and we will do the very best we can to help you.
Nathan, thank you. Just one last question has come in here. If you know someone is open and shouldn't be, what are the options? I guess those that are jumping the gun and breaching. So Nathan, you're sort of opening and closure king here. What's the process people should follow?
I would recommend that you report it to your local trading standards department or environmental health department. Probably the easiest way to do that is to look up the citizens advice service online, because they're the people that do our frontline telephone handling for us. So phone it, report it to them, and it will get filtered through to the local trading standards department.
That's great. Thank you very much indeed, Nathan. Just to conclude, we have spoken to nearly 7,000 businesses since we opened the helpline at the end of March. So we have a really sort of keen ear to what the business's issues are. And we work very closely with our partners at Trading Standards, Environmental Health, Health and Safety Executive, to make sure that everyone understands the pressures, the constraints, and the sort of challenges that businesses are facing. One thing I would say on behalf of all the partners is that there is a willingness to be supportive and to try and help you reopen, move the economy, but do it in a safe manner. And no one is looking to jump down you or issue closure notices or to take you to court or to sue you or fine you, whatever it might be. That is definitely not the intention. This is really about trying to help you improve and do things properly. So having worked with the partners for a number of months and sort of years prior to this, please, I'd encourage you to don't see them as enforcers, see them as support mechanisms. Contact them, ask the question, then you're not going to get in trouble for asking the question, and they'll be only too delighted to help you. I have to remind Kay to save the chat so that we have that for future reference, and we'll develop our knowledge. But for now, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us during your lunch hour today. Thank you especially to Annie Sargent, Environmental Health Partnership Manager at Sevenoaks and Dartford District Council, and to Nathan Martin, Principal Trading Standards Officer at Kent Trading Standards. Thank you very much indeed. Good luck with the businesses, stay safe, and hope to speak to you all again another time. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye all.